Hello and welcome to this video where I'll show you what the Figaf tools can do for SAP Cloud Platform integration. So we'll go through a demo of all the different functions that the tool are able to do. So the first thing is obviously CPI is one of the big areas that customers is investing a lot in, and where it also makes sense to have a better tool to handle these different things. So one of the things that we have added is this launchpad, and this is really crucial because it's sometimes difficult actually to understanding what your landscapes is, what's the developer tenant, where is the production, and sometimes it becomes challenging to actually figure out where it is. So in the Figaf tool, we are able to obviously create agents that connect to all of the different applications that you have, and also to set up the landscape that shows you what are the development, queue, and production system that you have. And with that, you have easy access to all the different applications that is in your landscape. So if I want to go to the CPI development tenant, I can just click here, go directly and see the data here. So that's saved me a lot of time, and instead of me having to go through a lot of emails and finding what are the correct tenants for these things, this is a simple place just to get it. The biggest thing that we have added to make the life easier for CPI developers is this transport approach, and our goal is to make it as easy for you to transport and document all the changes that you have made, and making it as seamless as possible to make changes in your landscape. So the first thing that's obviously important is to be able to track who have made which changes to what object. Is it a part of the BPM model? Is it a script or mapping? What was the object that was configured? And what we have here is our change tracking tool, and the change tracking tool allow you to actually monitor all changes in the landscape, finding all the differences and all the things that have been changed during the last period of time. And this will download all iflows, all scripts, and all configurations. And with this, you can actually see when a configuration was changed and what it was changed to. So we can see we have now got some new element in, and there's scripts that will allow to run this in background. So we can see we got version 1.0.9, and if we click into this, we can check at the versions, and here we can easily see what was changed between these two versions. So we can see there was some content modifier here that was changed, and here we can see what the value was, and with this, we have a good way of understanding what was changed and for what reason, or see what was changed. Now we need to connect it to a business reason, and this could be a service request, incident, a solution manager, object or task, and all we need is like an external identifier that you can put in these external applications that actually allow you to link this with a business requirement. And the reason why you want to do that is you want to have information about what was changed by which user. So what we can do now in the IRT tool is we can say, okay, we want to assign this to a ticket, and we'll create a new one. Service request 950, so it's just an external number. We can select, so we have some small status indicators, but obviously this is not going to be the place where you want to have full end-to-end visibility, but it is giving you an idea about what's being changed for what reason. So now we want to add this object, and we can see it's already been added. Next part is we want to do configuration of this, so we can actually configure this object across the landscape. So it's a CPI and a CPI landscape. It's called FSD. And here we're going in and checking parameters across the landscape. We can see that there are some that are user credentials that we've picked up as user credential. If we make this to something that's that is not valid and say save, we would get a warning that says here this value does not exist on your QA system. And with that, it's pretty easy to actually configure this across the landscape. We also want to specify a unique host and in the target environment, and you can specify these if you want to override the values that you're getting from the change. Or so some of them we're able to determine automatically. If it's coming from the HTTP, we can pick up if it's a user credential or a certificate key store entry that is used to handle this value. So we can now know that it's been saved as number 2 here, QA demo number 2 as the host. So now we have saved it, and so I guess I was a bit ahead of this. We want to test our changes. And configured, here we have it. So if you want to test this iflow, so we'll go back to our ticket. We have our 950. We can go in and we can look at our test cases here. We can look up all the test cases that are involved in this, and we can see we got one here. Let's take the live demo, and it's pretty easy to set up test cases. It's just go in and record them, and then you can run them on all the test objects that you have. So here we have it. We will then run, we can open our testing template, and here we can see the test case. We can run it on one or more systems. I guess we will just run it on our development system, this tenant. And this will take a little while, so it will switch the iflow into trace mode. We will then go into the result. We will pull the last result, and with this it will take the messages from all the different steps that it have in this process and do comparison of these. And then let's see if what the result is. So here we can see it's pretty okay. If there were any errors, we would be able to go in and see the differences here. We can see what the payload was, and that would be highlighting that shows and easy to ignore certain elements in this. So now we've tested it. We know that this works, and we have configured it across our landscape. Then we want to transport this, and we have created an individual way of transporting individual iflows. So that means that you can actually transport this across the board. So we will go back into our ticket. So we are now ticket here. We will create a transport, and we'll create the transport like this. We will just go in. We will say this is our landscape, and it will know these are the tickets that you have added to this, or these are the iflows you have added to this, and then it will be possible to add them. So to create this successfully, we can then see what was. We can go and import it, and we've created like a virtual target environment because we don't have multiple systems, but we have obviously tested. If you want to transport this into a new CPI tenant, you can also do that pretty easy without much configuration needed for it. So with that, we have added our iflow here, and if we go back and check out our ticket, we can see that we have this FSD ticket. We have seen we have added the configuration that we were just in and applying. We have added the changed the configuration on the iflow in the QA environment, and if we go here in our QA environment, we have then created prefix packages because of this virtual configuration. And if we check out the configuration of this, we can see that it has selected the new value that we have actually created, making it really easy to actually document what was being changed, and don't give developers access to the productive system, meaning it will be less secure because you don't need to give them as much information, because they can see all the things that they need from the Figaf tool, looking at what kind of passwords you have created and everything like that. So that makes it pretty simple. So now we have done our transport. We have next part is we want to document what we actually have been making, and we have two parts of documentation. The first is we want to create a documentation of the iflow that shows you how this has been changed over a period of time, and the second part is about documenting what was actually changed as a part of this. So what we'll do is we'll go into our Figaf tool. We will first create our iflow documentation, and to do that we will click here, we'll create the scenario documentation, and this will create an Excel sheet that contains a list of when this was changed, what the statuses was, we got what are the different connections that have been defined, which test cases do we have for this, and what was the last result on this. So obviously here there's something we need to look into. We have like a flat representation of the flow, and if there's multiple different processes, you would also see them here. We have the configuration across the landscape, and we have what are the different resources that you have added to this one. Then the next part is we have a ticket or a report we can generate, and this report then shows what was actually been done for this specific test case. So you can see you can then put this one into your solution manager, service request tool, ServiceNow, whatever you're using, as a way of documenting what was changed in this specific case by which user in your landscape. You have what are the tests run, what was the result of these tests, and you have all the transports that have been executed in this process. So on that also, then this makes it really a seamless process for documenting, change management, tracking, and improving connections, because developers don't need full access to a productive environment. So no one would actually make any changes in the iflow there. But we are also other features like monitoring, and one of the things we have here is an online viewer of the CPI data, making it really easy to set up multiple views for different users, so they can actually see what's going on. And this allows business to actually monitor the process a little easier, so you don't need to give special access to a CPI developer. You can just say that this developer can only, or this user can only see financial data or HR data, and possibly not even payloads. And what we'll do is the Figaf tool is just like a gateway between the CPI tenant. So we're using the workflow, the system user that we have that connect to the CPI tenant, and then filtering and orchestrating the OData, making it a lot easier to see what's going on. So let me show you what this looks like. So here we have our monitoring, and here we have a set of different monitors that we have set up. We can see we have this iflow. There's some latency tests that are running right now. We have some Fibonacci. So it's really easy to just go around, see all data around these things, and get a good overview of what's processing. You can go and drill in and say you only want to see specific iflows, change the date for it, and you have the option to add one or more, or all flows, or just individual flows to each of these roles. And if we go into edit mode, you would then be able to see we got 2 roles created, that you can actually see what is going on with these things. So then this makes it simple to monitor the application. Alerting, so making it a lot simpler for users to create alerting, and sometimes you just want to fail a message, and or not. Sometimes a message fails, and obviously you can easily search for all messages that has status failed, or potentially if you have added a specific receiver that says receiver equal log, and then you know it's a message that may not have been saved, but it is something that you need to look into and set up rules and alerts to handle. And what we can do is we can resend the message in some cases. We have the option to send it to a person, or we can create a test case around it. So let's look at this. And here we got our flows. So when we are selecting this on our flow, we have different options. So we can select our OData filter, and here we have some metrics as to handle the processing of status messages. But if we take a look at this logging, we can see that there was some messages being sent right now, and we can see that what data we have around this. We have added labels in the rules. We have payload information here, and here we can see what was actually sent in this process. What are the data, and we can go and view this message. What was in this one, and this makes it real simple to create. We also have the option to create rule, and the rule would then look something like this, where it says, hey, if the scenario equals to this, or you can create all elements in the payload. You can then create a text that describes what the reason for this one, add some alerts, what you want to do with this, if you want to reprocess it, how many times. You can mute it. You can send it to an email. You can create HTTP integration, so you can send it to Jira, Solution Manager, or something else for someone actually to look into. If it's a mapping mistake, you can just say, hey, I don't want this as a PI problem. This is something that the business user needs to figure. And you can just send it directly to the business user in an email or wherever you want to send those guys information. So that was the alerting, and here we have a simple iflow that has a specific flow. We can resend it, and then it will be processed, and it's not possible to resend this one immediately until we got information that the other process we sent was actually processed correctly. So here we're just downloading all the messages into the IRT database. We're saving context about the information and status and how it was processed. We have the option to set up these rules with XPath, and as all developers know, it's pretty easy to set up these things that actually find the values that is important. Webhooks to Jira, Solution Manager, what you have, and specify reprocess is not allowed as an option, and to do this restart, it works with SOAP HTTP and Process Direct, and what you need to do is just to add a prepare step in a script, and then if it fails, you would just save the message as a binary data, and then you can actually see the data in that way. And then the Figaf IRT tool will pick it out because it's saved with a specific parameter. We also have a resource monitor, and this would be something that would trigger alerts if the CPU usage is above 80%, if latency is 3000 milliseconds. So we have an iflow that you deploy that would run continuously, and it will just see what the latency of running this specific iflow is. If it's above something, you can then set up alerts, and what you'll get is some graph that shows how your CPIs are performing, and if any problems occur on these, you can be a bit more proactive about handling these instead of just waiting until the business call and say, hey, our messages is taking too long to process. So here you can drill in and see how the processing was over a period of time, how the CPU load was changing, and when your tenants were changed. So this gives you some indication about how the system is actually behaving. And we can see there was actually some problem here where latencies was above a certain threshold. But most likely this was also the place where we were processing a lot of messages. So for API management, we have much of the same functionality. We have the same way of documenting the changes to it, because it's just a lot of resources that you can log into. We can transport them individually across the landscape. We also have a simple logging of failed messages that are just using the key value store to handle these payloads. And if customer requires, it can also be extended to handle testing, unit testing in much the same way. For SAP PI PO, we have a lot bigger suite with a lot of more functionalities. We have alertings using the component-based message alerts as triggering points. We're able to use a link between the business objects or business requirements like service requests in our tickets with SAP CTS transports. So that means that you can just use those as a way of documenting all changes for a specific business requirement. And then you have configuration across the landscape, import of configuration or configuration. So once you have imported the CTS transport DAT application will then configure the communication channels as you have specified it in your landscape. We have scenario configuration. You can configure how scenarios should behave in different landscapes. So with testing, we have a lot of options for testing. It is able to determine what kind of integration pattern you're using. It's sync, async, bridges. Is it using any of the B2B splitter? And based on that, you can test. You can test with modules. You have the option to anonymize data, making it possible to actually test with sensitive payloads, because all the data would be anonymized in the processing. You have the option to create scenario documentation, as we saw with the CPI, but obviously tailored to what you need in a PI world. We have some things on the roadmap. We have, and this is in progress, we have a shared resource between iflows that actually allow you to take a script and use it in multiple different iflows, and once it's been changed in one of them, it will automatically know we need to run it in these other scripts, create tickets for it, so actually are able to test that once we're applying this one, we know that we're testing all of this, because it needs to be really, if you're going to share resources, if you're making a change in one of them, it may affect some of the other flows, and therefore you need to have a good test and change management around this. We're also making a mock service with the Figaf tool, so you can, for CPI flows, that one it will call the Figaf tool instead of the normal adapter, and with that we can mock data and send it back to the system, and in that case we would actually be able to reproduce payloads. For instance, scenarios where you have employee creation, that's not really possible in a lot of scenarios, because yeah, you can only create an employee once, then you need to create some scripts that delete it or something else if you really want to make some good services. And in this case, if you just want to test that your scripts and everything like that is in order, this would help in that case. So the next step is you can go try Figaf out. We have two versions of it. We have a cloud version that we're running in our data center or in Google. And then we have an on-prem version where you have a lot of deployment options that you can run it either on your laptop to a server, Docker image and stuff like that. Go to figaf.com/IRT to get that one. If you have any questions, do reach out and give me some feedback or requests or comments on what you see that we can improve. Thank you for watching.